Welcome to the channel. If you're new here, I'm building a 20-foot catamaran sailboat in my garage, and in this video I'm going to show you the stern steps being finished, except for some last little bit of touch-up finishing, such as rounding over the edges. We're going to complete the stern steps in this video. Most of the work is going to be installing this access hatch. But we'll also thicken up the side here a little bit, all in preparation for rounding over the edges and getting fiberglass here. Alright, let me show you all the steps. Here are the two triangular pieces to go into the stern steps, and I have marked off the area that needs to be coated with thin epoxy, and later this will get applied with thickened epoxy, but I always put thin epoxy on first so that it can soak into the wood. And these are the two triangles that will go right here on the stern steps. The triangle pieces are epoxied in place and trimmed, and for this what I did was I let this side overhang a little bit and then came along after the epoxy cured and cut that off with the flush cut pull saw, and it almost didn't need any sanding after that, but I just touched it up with a little bit of sandpaper, and now it's time to get this outer piece of plywood installed. Everything's flat and sanded and ready for it, so I'm going to follow a similar procedure, cut out a couple triangle pieces and glue them on. Here's the back plywood glued in place, and I used 3 of the 12-inch deep throat C-clamps and a couple of the spring clamps to hold it in place. The large C-clamps here were able to reach through the back side and clamp over here, and you can also see how it looks before it's been trimmed. So I'll get that trimmed off next after I remove the clamps. I'm using the flush cut pull saw again to trim this piece of plywood. It does a really good job of cutting the plywood close to the support boards. Everything is trimmed flush and sanded, and it's all nice and smooth. Now, I'm not so worried about smoothing up edges like this, because this is all going to get rounded over before fiberglassing anyway. So, you know, getting that little bit that's sticking off there, that'll be taken off with the router when it's all rounded over. But for the most part, everything is smooth and flush, and the next step is going to be to sand inside here and get this ready for fiberglassing. And this is probably a good time to mention also, in the previous video a comment was left about, you know, how to protect these compartments from water intrusion, and it was asked if I was going to put foam in here, and I did think about that, and I'm not going to put foam because I'm worried that would just hide any potential problems. Instead, what I'm doing is I've left this open here, so there's an opening all the way from here down into this lower compartment, and I'm thinking about putting a watertight access panel here so that it could be taken off and maybe a camera put down in here and inspected to see if there's any problems, or to, you know, make sure everything's okay. So that's the plan, and yeah, the next step is to get this sanded and ready for fiberglassing. The fiberglass is cut and ready to go in. I'm going to put a piece of the 1708 underneath the top step, and I've got various other pieces of the 6-ounce fiberglass cut and ready to go for some of the inside edges inside this upper step. The insides are now fiberglassed, and again, I did not use peel ply, so the surface is a bit shiny, and that's okay because this is not going to get any additional finish. And after that, I sanded up the edges so they are roughed up and ready for this next piece of wood that is going to completely enclose the aft steps. Here is the slightly oversized piece of plywood that will go onto the stern step, the final cover. It will fit in there just like that. And I also have these access hatches, and I'm going to put them in here on each side, something like that. So what I did is I just centered this left and right, and then I took the same distance here and made that the same distance from the top, drew a couple lines, put this in here, and then drew a circle around the portion that needs to be cut out. So this is the portion that will go through the plywood. And yeah, I'm going to cut these out now and test fit the inspection hatches. One of the holes is cut and I have the inspection hatch inserted. There's just a very slight gap around it, which is good. And yeah, it fits very nice. And now I'm going to do the other one. I just drilled a hole first, and then I'm using the jigsaw to go around and cut out the larger hole. Since I'm cutting out all these holes, I decided to make a couple of extra rings here to make the wood a little bit thicker, and I think that will help to reinforce the connection points here. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to screw these in or bolt them in, but whichever way, I think it's probably a good idea to add a little extra reinforcement there. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do, and now I'm going to start preparing these by getting some fiberglass on them. The fiberglass and reinforcing rings are installed on the back sides, and I only put peel ply along the edges here. I didn't put it here in the middle, and I didn't try to get it to go up over this extra reinforcing ring, but it is here along the edge because this will be the edges around here where it will get glued onto to the stern steps. So that's there, and I probably could have made these reinforcing rings a bit wider. Next time I do this, I think I will definitely make them wider. I don't think it'll be a problem with this. There's definitely no load on any of these. Yeah, but anyway, next time I will be making these a little bit wider. So the next step is to get fiberglass on this side, and the reason I'm doing that is because I want to have it all ready to be able to drill the holes here around this opening to attach this, and I want to go ahead and get all of that done on the drill press before I attach everything to the boat. I think that'll be a lot easier. So I'm going to go ahead and fiberglass the outer side of these, the outer side of this now before I put it onto the sailboat. So that will be the next step, to get another layer of fiberglass on the outside. Alright, so what I'm doing here with this 1708 is applying the epoxy to the back side, the side with the chopped strand mat first, just to get the epoxy into it. It helps it to soak through. I'm not going to pre-coat the wood because I'm putting quite a bit of epoxy here on the back side already, and this will wet this out just fine. So just going along and trying to spread this out, just spreading it out with the brush. I have the roller that I'll use in just a moment. And I just put 3 pumps of epoxy and 3 pumps of hardener into the mixing bowl here. the mixing container. And yeah, I'm not trying to get it transparent yet. I'm just applying the epoxy all over. And I'll go ahead and apply it here to the center as well. It might waste a little bit of epoxy, but when I flip it over, that way I don't have to worry about where the hole is going to line up. It'll just all have epoxy. And I can kind of tell what areas of the chop strand mat have had enough epoxy and what areas haven't. The areas that haven't still look like they have some holes in it, like some patterns to the weave. That should be good. Now let's flip this over. And some of the epoxy is already starting to soak through. That's good. Just get this lined on here. Let it hang over a bit, and then go along and apply extra epoxy to the top side. And now we can start to see it really become transparent. And if I have to make up some more epoxy, I will, but I want to get this, what I have here in the container, spread around here as well as I can first, because I'm going to go over this with the roller, and that will help spread this epoxy out even more. So this might be enough. We'll see. You don't want to have too much epoxy. You want it to be wet out, and that's it. Here, what I might do is flip this over, put a little bit more here on the back side. Here we go. Alright, let's see how that's going to work with the roller now. Let's start here in the middle, and I just kind of go back and forth, and this really helps to work the epoxy into the fiberglass, pushing it down into the wood, getting any air bubbles out at the same time. Kind of does all of that. And I'm just looking for a even coat. And yeah, that's, so far it's looking pretty good. There, a little bit at the corner probably needs some more. Here, I'll just go ahead and apply it to the wood here. There we go. Let's see how that looks. That looks much better. And for those of you who've been watching a lot of my videos, you know that my hands shake a lot, so I have the camera just sitting down right now, but if I was holding the camera, it would be shaking all over. So I do my best. I have what are called essential trimmers, and it just makes it hard for any type of fine motor control. It's hard to do things like handwriting, or even signing my name sometimes is difficult. For building the boat, well, you know, I get epoxy all over the place. But normally that's okay. Let's see, do we have any more in here? A little bit left. And after I get this fiberglass on and fully saturated with the epoxy, then I'll put the peel ply on, and there may be enough epoxy in this to wet out the peel ply as well, but if not, and I don't know, maybe there's not, we'll see. If not, I'll go mix up maybe another pump, maybe 2 pumps of the epoxy. And use that to finish off the peel ply. The 1708, the stitching really does a good job of holding the fiberglass in place. So I'm really happy with that. Okay, so we're good there. Let's get the peel ply on. I've mentioned this a couple times in videos, well, maybe once, I don't know, already. When I buy the fiberglass, I buy it on a roll, and that's because when you fold fiberglass, I mean, it's glass fibers, and when you fold it, you can break those fibers. When I got the peel ply, I wasn't as concerned about getting it on the roll, and I probably should have been, because where the peel ply folds, we end up with these seams, and that actually shows through on the final finish. Yeah, so I'm going to need, this is just a little bit too dry, so I'm going to go mix up another pump of the epoxy, and I'll be right back. And I'm back. So I'm using fast hardener, and it's a little warm in the garage right now. It's nighttime, and even so, it's a little warm. It's probably maybe almost 80 degrees Fahrenheit here in the garage right now. So this epoxy will start curing really fast. So I don't want to mix up a lot at once. So that's why I haven't even started on this other piece of plywood yet. I'm just doing one at a time. And I'm just mixing it up with a little chip brush. And that works really well. Okay, that should be mixed good. Now let's get this on here. Doesn't have to go on thick at all. But I think one pump should be enough to cover this peel ply. Now see, I'm a bit worried this seam is causing it to fold up on me. I might want to put something on that to hold that peel ply down, because otherwise this peel ply is just going to keep wanting to pop up here at that edge. So again, buying it folded just was not a good idea. So let me get this all on here. I was mentioning the fast hardener. This is really just a very small workpiece here, so it's easy to wet this out and finish before the epoxy kicks off and becomes unworkable. If it was a larger work surface or a more complicated piece that was going to take more time, then at this temperature I would definitely go with the slow hardener. So, and I even have a little bit of extra slow hardener if I really need it, but that's it's not so often. You'll notice I'm wearing gloves, and I'm also wearing these wrist pads. It's a throwback from the 80s, maybe, the exercising sweatbands. But they work really well because with these gloves, my hands will sweat inside the gloves. And if I'm not careful, if I turn my hand like that, sweat will actually drip out of the glove and onto the work surface. So I don't want that. So I put these sweatbands on to protect that. Just helps keep the sweat off of the epoxy. And I find that anything above, even if it seems cool at first, if it's 70 degrees and I'm working with gloves, I'm going to start sweating. So I may not worry about the sweatbands if the temperature here in the garage is maybe like 67 degrees Fahrenheit or something like that. It's quite cool at that temperature, so then I don't have to worry about sweating. But anything other than that, and yeah, I got to be careful about making sure I don't drip on my work surface. And I'm having a bit of trouble. Again, this is these where the peel ply was folded, and it's developing some air bubbles underneath those folds. So I'm just trying to pop those air bubbles out with this brush, and I'll just have to leave that a little bit thicker there. That looks pretty good. Alright, so for this side, here, let me go over this lightly now, make sure, yeah, I'm starting to get some more air bubbles in there. Even right over here, I'm getting an air bubble. It's all those creases in the peel ply. It's not a big deal, I could sand it out later, but if I can get rid of the air bubbles now, that's less work later. So, alright, let me try that, and then from over here, let me go get some pieces of plastic. Okay, I have some plastic cut already into little squares that I normally use when I need to clamp into epoxy. But here, I'm going to use this to help press down a bit on these air bubbles. Little board. Yeah, no, that's going to stick there. Put one there. Let's put one there. And I think I got a longer one here. Let's put that one there. Wonder if I need to put any more weight. A little bit of weight won't hurt. save some of these. I might need some of these for the next one also. Just kind of stack some of this up here. That should be good, just to help hold some of the air bubbles out. Alright, so I'm going to do the same thing on the next one. So you saw the recording of this one. I'm just going to do the same process on this second piece now. The front sides are now both covered in fiberglass, and the peel ply is still on. And this is what you're looking for in the finish, to make sure that there's a nice even coat, and if possible there are no air bubbles under the peel ply. That'll give you the best finish when removing the peel ply. Here's something interesting to take notice of. When I was trimming the fiberglass with the jigsaw, I noticed that it started to flake. I don't know if that's a good term or not, but flake the fiberglass, and it caused these separations here. So as I was cutting it, I made sure to stay well away from the actual edge that I want, so that any damage like that would not go into the fiberglass that's directly over the wood. And I will trim this away by sanding it with probably like a drum sander to get inside the this inner curve like this, and bring that right up to the edge of the wood without damaging the fiberglass that I want. And the same thing here. As I was trimming these edges, I did not get as close as I could, and this for the same reason. I wanted to make sure if there were any, you know, where the saw blade would grab the fiberglass and would tend to rip it, that it would not cause any delamination in the fiberglass that I wanted to keep. This is the little 1.5 inch drum sander attachment for the drill, and it did a really good job, as you saw, sanding out this curved inside edge of the fiberglass. So it's fairly smooth, good enough. The true test is being able to install the inspection hatch, just like that. And both of them are sanded, and the inspection hatch fits in both of them. So yeah, now it's time to test fit this on to the stern steps and see how it fits. The starboard side panel fits in here very nicely. just like that. So there's not going to be any problems with this one. But the port side panel, we have a bit of a problem. Let me show you. This is the port side panel, and on first glance it looks like it's fitting just nice, except that there is a wobble. Quite a significant wobble. And so far, for all of these panels, I haven't been worried about that. In fact, I've been putting in a bit of a twist on purpose. But I don't want to twist this board. When I was first doing it, I thought, oh, no problem. I'll just clamp it down and I'll put a twist in it. But I'm worried that that will cause leakage around this seal. If I twist the board, then that means I'm not going to get an even flat surface around this inspection hatch. So I need to fill this in. And I think that is going to be a good use for this board that I've been wondering if I'd ever be able to use it because of this piece of bark on it. And I think I'm going to use the table saw to cut a strip out of it and then use that here to build this out a little bit right here so that this this piece of plywood will sit flat on the stern steps. So that's the plan for this one, is I need to straighten this out by building this surface, by building this corner out a bit so that I can remove the twist from this panel. I cut the board with the table saw to about a 1/2 inch and then used the bandsaw to cut some wedge shapes, and then I glued those in now so that I don't have to be worried about them shifting while I'm gluing in this board. Yeah, so that worked out really well, and I put a little notch right here to account for a slight thickness here in the fiberglass on the back side, and it's a little misaligned, so I'll need to move this notch a little bit over. But other than that, the main thing is there is no more wobble. The wobble is completely gone, so this one will be able to be glued in completely flat, and I don't need to worry about creating a warp in this front here where the inspection hatch will need to be sealed in place. So the next step before I glue these on is I'm going to mark and drill oversized holes in this and then fill those in with epoxy. The holes are all drilled, and these are oversized holes, so you can see here's the screw that came with the inspection port or the inspection hatch, and the holes are definitely oversized. And the biggest reason I wanted to do this on the drill press, here's the drill press here. The biggest reason I wanted to do this on the drill press is because these are very close to the edge, and some of them actually come through the edge. So getting the alignment of this, making sure that we have a nice straight hole drilled for this oversized hole, I think was important. And now I will fill these in with thickened epoxy and clean it up. Anything that needs to be cleaned up, I'll take care of that at the same time. I'll probably put a little bit of tape over it to cover those spots where it actually came through the edge. And yeah, once all that thickened epoxy is set, then we should be ready to drill the actual screw hole sizes. And I'm still trying to decide if I'm going to use these screws or not. I think it is okay to screw into solid epoxy, but I'd like your opinion. Should I go with a screw-in type here, or should I go with a bolt-in type? So I'm still deciding what's the better approach here. So if you have an opinion, let me know in the comments. I'd really like to hear what you have to say. All right, well, I'm gonna get these holes filled in with thickened epoxy now. So it's time to fill in these pre-drilled holes with some thickened epoxy, and I have some plastic down on the workbench and a little bit of peel ply here. And the first thing we're going to do, and this is something that will usually give much easier and better results, is to pre-coat with unthickened epoxy before applying the thickened epoxy. So I'm going to put some on this side and go all around these holes, and then I'm going to flip it over and apply it to the other side. The other thing you'll notice is that this is one of the best things that I've found, is to use these wrist sweatbands, because after working in gloves for anything more than just 5 or 10 minutes, my hands will start getting sweaty inside the gloves, and without those sweat bands, if I turn my hand like that, I can actually drip sweat onto the work surface. So these sweat bands come in very handy. I thought I was going to need to use some blue painter's tape. I have some tape here. I don't think I'm going to need that, but we'll see. So let's put that peel ply down. Put that there. It's not going to stick to the plastic, so I'm not worried about that, but I want to try to cut down on the amount of sanding that needs to be done. So just use a bit of peel ply there. Alright, so now let's go in to the back side here, and let's make sure to get epoxy inside each one of these holes. I found that this also works really well to improve or increase the working time that you have with the thickened epoxy, because sometimes the thickened epoxy will start to kick off early, but if you've already got a thinned epoxy covering the surface, then what would have normally been unworkable thickened epoxy might be able to still work, because it's got a good chemical bond with the unthickened epoxy that's already in place. So putting the unthickened epoxy down first will help to increase our working time. I'm using the fast hardener. I put just 2 pumps. It's a small container. I just put 2 pumps of the epoxy resin and the fast hardener. But it is a bit warm here in the garage. It is nighttime, so it's a little bit cooler. I'm not running the air conditioner, but it's a little bit cooler. But it's still warm enough that this epoxy is going to go off here before too long. So that's why it's important to get the unthickened epoxy in here first. I think I'm going to go around the inside edges of these also, because I sanded the inside edges of these, and I haven't done any extra epoxy after using the drum sander. So I'm just going to go around also and make sure that the inside edges of this is all coated well. There we go. And let's come back here and get this one. Okay, just like that. I can see some spots where the wood is a different color, and I know that that still needs some epoxy. I'm just going to put another coat on the top here as well. I touched up a little bit with some sandpaper on the tops of these because there were some sharp points sticking out, but just to make sure that that is fully sealed, let's go over it with another coat of epoxy as well. Okay, so I think that is all good. So I'm going to take this batch and add some thickener. I think I'll need to add a little bit more. I'll probably put another 1 pump of epoxy and hardener in there as well, just to make sure we have enough. And if not, I can always make some more. So I will be right back with some thickened epoxy. Okay, and I'm back. So here's the consistency that I made the thickened epoxy. And let's see if we can get it to go down into these oversized holes. So I just want to push it down there. There will be some air bubbles. I may want to go back with like a little stick or something and try to push that down there to make sure there are no air bubbles. We'll do that in just a moment. Let me get this spread out. I can feel it starting to turn warm already, so let me see if I can get this out of the mixing container. It's my shakiness, my hand's shaky. Sorry about sometimes the camera work is a little shaky. It's hard for me to keep my hands still sometimes. I have what are called essential tremors, so it makes it very difficult for fine motor skills. So, but hey, if I can build a boat and I can't even keep my hands from shaking, you know, maybe you can do something also. So I'd like to think that that encourages you to take on projects like this also. Alright, I think so. I added another 1 pump of the resin and hardener. I think it might actually be enough. Yep. Okay, so now let's see, now that we've got them all spread out, let's see, what can I use? I think this will work just fine. And I use the scissors and see if I can make this a little bit narrower. Okay, yeah, that should work. Let me come back over here. Yep, there are definitely some air bubbles in there. And I think this stick is helping to get them out. You might need to lift this up. I think that'll help. the air bubbles a bit so it's not trapped in there. Yeah, that's working. I could have made this epoxy thicker, but I wanted it at least to be able to settle under its own weight. That was the idea anyway. So just a tiny bit runny. There we go. Yeah, when I pushed that back down, I saw some of these come back up. They kind of bubbled up a bit, so that's good. There's still some air bubbles in there. But that helped. Just go around. Okay, so I'm going to let that one sit for a bit. Let's come back over to this one. Let's raise this one up a bit and do the same thing. I can feel the epoxy starting to get a bit firmer, so it's starting to cure already. But it'll make a good chemical bond because of the unthickened epoxy. So actually, by having it starting to kick off like this, that's helping. At least I think so. So, almost done. Okay, let's push that one back down. That one. Let's go back to the spreader. And just shape these a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect. This will all be on the inside. The main thing is to get the holes completely filled. Because that will allow us to drill the actual size that we need. Now, earlier I mentioned that I'm looking for your opinion on whether I should drill these out and use the wood screws that come with the inspection hatches, or whether I should replace those wood screws with bolts and nuts so that they would be bolted in. So in case you missed that or you fast forwarded through that portion where I asked the question originally, I'll ask it again. So I'm looking for your feedback on what is the best way to attach an inspection hatch through these oversized holes. Should they be attached with the wood screws? And how will that wood screw grip the thickened epoxy? I know thickened epoxy is hard. It's not necessarily brittle, so maybe a wood screw would be able to grip into it. I don't think it would crack it. Or is it better just to go with a bolt? I'm spreading some thickened epoxy here on the inside as well, so I'll need to go over this with the little drum sander again. But there was some unevenness between the radius of the original hole in the overall piece of plywood and the reinforcing ring. I don't know if I mentioned this or not, but if I do this again, which I will, next time I'm going to go with larger reinforcing rings. There's not much stress on this one, so I don't think it's that big of a deal, but it is a little bit thin, so I think it would be good next time to have a little bit extra thickness there on that reinforcing ring. Okay, so this extra epoxy, thickened epoxy here, I think we'll fill in some of these unevenness inside here. Let's come over to this one. I don't know if you can tell or not, it's starting to get even more thick. It doesn't feel warm anymore because there's not much left in the mixing pot, but I am starting to feel some lumps there. Yeah, there's a lump that's just not going to spread very well. Let me get that one out. It might look a little messy now, but it'll clean up nicely with the drum sander. Let me check the oversized holes, make sure they're still good. I don't want them to sink down, so I want them, if anything, to be raised up a little bit, and then I can sand that away. And let's go back over onto this one and check here. Okay, I think that is going to do it. I will get my mixing stick and mixing bowl cleaned up, and I'll see you back after after this is cured and I've sanded all this smooth. So here is a good before and after video. This is before sanding and after sanding. There was one spot here on the front where the epoxy went past the peel ply, so I sanded that off. And here on the back, I sanded all of these flush and took it down to the wood again, so I'll need to put another coat of just unthickened epoxy on that. The inside radius is now much closer to this. So when we put this on now, it's a much tighter fit, but still it's a good fit. So there's no wobble at all anymore. When I sanded the inside radius of this with the drum sander, I took it a little bit at a time and kept checking with the inspection hatch until it just fit just nice. So here's this one that I've not yet started working on, and you can see what I'm talking about here, where the epoxy went past the peel ply a little bit. So this area right here will need to be touched up, but other than that, the peel ply comes off. I'll try to do this one hand. It's a little tight. Now I'm not going to be able to do that, so let me see if I can set the camera down here. There we go. It might be at a bit of an angle, but now I can use both hands to peel this off. There we go. And now let's take the camera again. And you can see all of this will need to be cleaned up with the drum sander. The filled holes are very nice. Oh, there's a little bit of a bubble in that one. So since I have to come over this with some more thin or unthickened epoxy, I'll make sure to fill that in with a little bit of thickened epoxy. Get that hole filled in. And back here, sand these off flush, and that'll probably need more epoxy here as well. So let me get this one also cleaned up. I tried to use a little file to open up that hole, and it just kept getting bigger. So in the end, I just took it over to the drill press and used a drill to widen the hole and also rough it up inside and get it ready for epoxy filling. Well, it's been a while since I've worked on the boat. I've been trying to catch as many of the late spring, early summer rains as I can and get a garden in. So a lot of my days recently have been outside, but I'm back to the boat now. And the last we left off, I was patching this little hole here, and that is now sealed up, and everything here is ready. Both sides are all looking good, and I've decided to go with bolts. I've been debating whether to screw these hatches in or bolt them in, and I decided to go with bolts. I'm just not convinced that over time a screw will not cause problems. You know, maybe it'll come loose, or eventually it'll cause some stress cracks in there. So I think the best solution overall is to go with bolts. So I've had this tool for quite a while. It's a thread checker, and I've got both metric and, well, I hate to call these standard. I'm not sure exactly. You know, metric is used everywhere in the world except for the United States. So yeah, to me that is the standard. I wanted to go metric with these, and I first used the thread checker to get the metric size. I forget how many millimeters it came up to now, and I needed a length enough to go all the way through, and to be able to have room for the washers and lock washers and nuts to go on the end. So I needed something, if I remember right, it was something around either 30 or 35 millimeters. And I just could not find anything at that length for a reasonable price. And I finally found with the other set here that a number 10, so this is not metric, but a number 10 bolt will fit in here just nicely. So that's what I went with, and I was able to find some machine screws with Phillips drive. They are 1024, 1¼ inch, and these are in 316 stainless. That's the other thing. I found a lot of 304 stainless, but not a lot at a reasonable price for 316 stainless. But I did find the marineboltsupply.com, and they had these at a very reasonable price. So I picked up 100 of those and some stainless steel washers and lock washers and the nylon nuts for all of this, and this will work just fine. Now, one of the problems with this is trying to figure out how, what size hole to drill. And if it was metric, that would be no problem. The size of the bolt is the size in millimeters that you need. I'm not sure exactly how much this needs to be in for the drill, so I had to use my calipers to measure this, and I found this drill bit. Let's see, what is this? This is a, if I can read it here, I'm trying to read it off camera. 3/16 inch. So a 3/16 inch drill bit is just slightly larger than that bolt. So that's what I'm going to use to drill these holes out, so the bolts will be able to go through. So I'm going to take this over to the drill press and get those drilled. Here's another neat little tool that I recently got. These are long nib markers, and I've always struggled before with marking things inside, maybe, well, it wasn't much of a problem here. These holes are fairly shallow, but if you had deeper holes and you needed to mark them, having a pen with a long nib like that comes in really handy. So I just got these on Amazon, and yeah, I thought I'd show them to you. They came in a pack with red, blue, and black, and it works really great for marking out where I need to drill these holes. The holes are now drilled, and I first made the marks, and I was going to just take this piece over to the drill press and drill out the holes that were marked, and then I thought that a better way to do this was to just drill one hole and then put the hatch in with the screw in that one hole to keep it from twisting, and then I drilled the other holes with the hatch in place, and I think that will guarantee an exact alignment. The markings were still useful to make sure that the holes weren't outside of the pre-drilled areas that were drilled larger and then filled in with epoxy. So the markings showed that everything was within those bounds. A couple of them were close, but they were within. The bigger problem is while I was drilling, I could feel some cavities. So there's probably at least 3 of these holes that I'm going to put some thinned epoxy in, not to fill up the entire hole, but to just make sure that any of those cavities are not exposing any bare wood inside there. So yeah, I'm going to touch these up a bit with thinned or unthickened epoxy, I should say, and get that ready before I epoxy these boards onto the boat. I'd really hope for the next step to be to put these boards in place, but now I need to fill in some of those voids with some unthickened epoxy. So that'll be the next step. I figured while I'm waiting for the unexpected epoxy to cure where I had to fill in the voids, I would start working on this side of the stern. And I want to put some type of handle here. And this edge is, or this side I should say, is a little thin to begin with. And I was originally thinking I was going to build this all the way out past this stringer, but then I don't really want to make that all solid wood, and I don't want to make another empty space in the side of the boat. So I'm thinking I'm going to put just another piece of plywood in here to thicken it a little bit more, make it a little bit more sturdy, and I'm going to drill and cut a hole, kind of a long hole with rounded ends in the side here for a handle, and that'll make it a little bit thicker and allow these edges to be rounded over for the epoxy, or allow the edges to be rounded over for the fiberglass, and also provide a handle. So what I've done here is, starting on this side, I just have a scrap piece of plywood that I've clamped on here, and I was able to use this scribe. I now have an actual scribe, so I don't need to try to tape together a couple pieces of scrap wood and a pencil together. I've got an adjustable scribe, and I made a line along there, and I'm going to cut that out and then shape and cut this piece of scrap wood here to fit in this triangular piece and thicken this wall a bit. Both of the extra triangular pieces are now epoxied in place, and I put a board there and clamped to the board to try to get some more even clamping pressure. And now I just need to wait for the epoxy to cure, and then I can remove all of the clamps. The epoxy is cured and all the clamps are off, and here's what it looks like. The other side looks the same, so this is just this one. Now that the clamps are off, I can do a better job of squaring off this edge. So I'm going to come along with some more thickened epoxy and just try to get this more square. Right now it kind of comes in at a rounded curve already, so I want this to come out and be a little bit more square here. And then when I round that over with the router bit, we'll have a nice straight round edge. If I try to round it over with the router bit now, it's just going to follow that curve that's already there, and I'm not sure exactly how that's going to look. So I'm going to try to square this up and then round it over with the router bit. So this is going to be another coat of thickened epoxy. Here is the extra thickened epoxy applied and smoothed out as best as I can, and now just waiting for that to cure, and then I will sand it as flat as I can get it. And once it's flat, then I should be able to round over the corners, or I should say round over the edges, and get a nice straight round over. And here are the hatch covers, or the boards that will support the hatch covers, and I've filled in the bottom 3 holes here and drilled them out again. And from this side you can actually see quite clearly the alignment of the holes inside the larger holes and how the epoxy will protect the wood. Now down here, these came very close to the edge, and they're okay. I've looked at them and inspected them, and they do have a solid coating of epoxy in there to protect the wood, but it's very close. So if I had to do this again, or I should say the next time I do this, I'm going to first drill these smaller holes and get those lined up perfectly, the way I did drilling the smaller holes this time, using the hatch cover as a guide, and then I'm going to drill the larger holes around the smaller holes, and that should center the larger holes around the smaller holes. And once those are filled in, then apply the hatch again, mark the smaller holes again, and re-drill the smaller holes. And I think that should give better results the next time, more evenly and centered epoxy around the larger holes. So yeah, so that's what will happen next time. But for right now, this is done, and both of these boards, both of these sides of the steps are ready to be epoxied in place. Well, I got to thinking about what I just said about re-drilling the larger holes after drilling the smaller holes, and I realized that, I have the smaller holes here drilled already. Why not apply this method now and drill a few larger holes for these 3 here at the bottom that were a little bit off center? So that's what I did. I did not go as large as I did originally, because I'm really just trying to drill to the side where the smaller hole was really close to the wood. So I'm going to fill these in, and then when the smaller holes are re-drilled, they should have a nice buffer of epoxy all the way around them now. I filled in the holes with epoxy, let it cure, and re-drilled them, and they all look much better. And for this filling, I used unthickened epoxy. I think I'm going to go that route from now on, if possible. I put a little bit of tape on the other side to block it off so that the epoxy wouldn't run out, and I found that that was a much more reliable way to avoid any voids inside the filled holes. So yeah, this worked out really well, and I think these covers are ready to be glued onto the stern of the boat now. Each of the access panel boards is now epoxied in place, and I'm just waiting for the epoxy to cure. You'll notice that I'm not using any clamps at all on either of these, and that's because I don't want to bend the board. I don't want to put a warp in it. I want that surface for the access panel, or for the access hatch, to remain perfectly flat. So yeah, there's no real stress on any of these, and they're sitting completely upright, and the epoxy is holding them in place just fine. So just need to wait for it to cure now. The epoxy is cured, and I put the inspection hatch in. Just it's not bolted in place, but just put it in there so you can see what it'll look like. And I trimmed the edges and touched everything up with a bit of sanding, and I think this is about as far as I'm going to go in this video. There's a lot more finishing work that needs to be done to round over all these edges and get it ready for fiberglassing, including this edge here. Now I've added a bunch of thickened epoxy here and touched it up with the sanding a little bit. I'm not looking for it to be completely smooth, just more straight than anything, and I think that will probably be enough to allow the roundover bit to put a curved edge on there, a round edge on that. So yeah, I think this will be all for this video. So yeah, thank you for watching. Bye.